Hello and welcome to the programme. A Russian court recently sentenced Ukrainian political prisoner Pavlo Hryb to 6 years in prison. The court hearing lasted only 5 minutes. Pavlo's defence has already filed a brief appeal. Hryb has announced in the meantime a hunger strike right after the verdict was announced as a protest against such injustice. Now, I'm pleased to say to talk more about this case, we are joined in the studio today by Denis Savchenko. He's a deputy director of the NGO Crimea SOS. Hello, thank you so much for coming in, Denis.
Thank you.
Thank you. So before we talk about the case and the future, what could happen, we want to show our viewers who perhaps haven't been following the story a small report from UATV. So let's watch.
Впервые мне выпадает такая возможность сказать свое слово.
Останнє слово.
Последнее слово.
Де я хотів нарешті сухом розповісти за все і голодую по правді.
А где я хотел бы наконец-то сказать все, как было на самом деле.
Ніхто не мав підстав гадати, що Білорусь, наче стороння, це небезпечно насправді. Бажаю наснаги і сили випробування. Пройти випробування положень достойно всім українським патріотам, пройти з гідністю, правді і совісті. Та я вже закінчу.
Ви можете докажете, може не докажете, про обвинення розказуєте?
Буду дійсно закінчувати. Тоді подякую всім, хто мене уважно слухав, хто мене в залі підтримував. Слава Україні, слава нації, слава українській нації.
Слава Україні, слава нації, слава українській.
So that was a video that was taken just a couple of days ago from the court session in Russia by UATV. So my first question is, what do you think are the next steps for Pavlo Hryb? Will it be, the verdict was perhaps unsurprising for many, so do you think it'll be part of a prisoner exchange, or what do you think will happen?
Definitely, this sentence was the part of the policy that the Russian Federation implements against Ukrainian citizens, and this is the part of the war that we are involved in. So definitely it wasn't unexpected. The sentence itself gives us a chance to talk about releasing Pavlo Hryb on pardon, exchanging him. But this is the matter of a lot of negotiations that we are still awaiting. And of course, it will not be very easy for Ukrainian side to negotiate it, because Russian Federation is very interested in keeping as many Ukrainian citizens as they can as political prisoners.
And it does, and as you just saw in that video that we just showed, he's incredibly strong, and at the same time he's incredibly sick. Now he's 20, he's behind bars. So do you think that he should be, he will be allowed more medical access?
Well, considering that he declared a hunger strike based on the absence of appropriate medical services provided to him, we don't think that anything will change significantly. But of course, this gives us a chance to talk not only about some diplomatic approaches in the process of his release, or some informal negotiations, but we are talking about the need to use the standards and provisions of humanitarian law, because this person, Pavlo Hryb, he has to be released in order to appropriate medical services to be provided to him.
Specialised medical services,
yes.
Because in fact just a few days ago we had his father here, and he was speaking to our Russian service, and he said that there's one clinic in Moscow, one in Kiev, and perhaps some international specialists, but it's not like when we talk about medical support, it's not any particular establishment. They have to be very specialised. considering the state he's in. Am I right in saying
yes,
that?
and there was a news that considering that that Pavlo is on a hunger strike, he was transferred to a separate cell in prison, and the conditions of being in this cell, they include that he cannot receive the medications for his digestive tract, and in order to somehow decrease the negative effect of many serious diseases that he suffers from. And definitely he is in need of a very difficult and complicated surgery, and the maintenance, the overviewing of his health condition in the future after the surgery.
And I want to talk about the case itself in a minute, but do you have the latest information on the state of his health? Because again, his father said that he's risking his own life by going on this hunger strike.
Yes, definitely it is kind of suicidal, considering that even the fact of him being imprisoned is a very high risk to his health condition, but fortunately there are no negative updates on his health condition as of now.
Yeah, and you've been following this case since the very start. How has the prosecution's evidence changed, if it has, since he was arrested in Belarus and transported illegally across the border to Russia back in 2017? Is the case changing, or are they trying to manipulate some facts?
Well, definitely the Russian side tried to manipulate the fact of detaining Pavlo Hryb. The problem is that we have evidences that he was arrested while crossing the state border between Ukraine and Belarus, but in accordance with the pre-trial documents provided by the Russian side, he was detained on the territory of mainland Russian Federation in the railway station, which is not true, because he has never left voluntarily. He has never left the territory of Belarus, and this makes us thinking of the territory of Belarus as a very enemy environment, and the place where Russian Federation authorities can conduct a so-called manhunt against Ukrainian citizens.
Well, I remember writing about this at the time, because it was around Independence Day in Ukraine and that year, and it was so surprising that he was arrested in Belarus and taken to Russia. When you talk about other political prisoners, often they were in occupied Crimea or they were in Russia when they were detained, but not in another country.
Yes, and the story is that the girl he wanted to meet and the girl he traveled to meet, she confessed that all the communication with Pavlo Hryb was somehow monitored and maintained by FSB, and that she was forced to do so because she was charged with criminal charges correspondingly.
Yeah, and how do you think Russia actually uses these particular Ukrainian political prisoners to their advantage? So what are they trying to achieve?
Well, there are different aspects to this thing. First of all, they want to establish this policy and environment of terror and show everyone on the territory, not only on the territory of Ukraine and other countries, but within the Russia, that there is no freedom, there is no hope, and there is no chance to act on your own will. So this is the first message that the Russian Federation wants to provide to voice on the outside. The other message is that Russian Federation wants to have as much tools to put Ukraine and other countries under pressure as they can, and political prisoners is this is what they chose as the main tool to put Ukrainian government under pressure.
Yeah, and even despite all this pressure that's going on, I really respect the work of the Ukrainian ombudsperson. and the different state officials who are still trying to gain access to Pavlo Hryb. Can you give us an update on that, the different consular access that perhaps he's been granted, or the diplomatic support that he's got from Ukrainian representatives?
Different representatives of different bodies like European Union, different governments like UK government, US government, and others. They voiced their concerns about this case, about imprisonment of Pavlo Hryb and his health condition. And of course, Ukrainian officials, including ombudsperson, representatives of the Ministry of External Affairs, they try to use this as the advantage to gain access to Pavlo Hryb and somehow to negotiate his release on pardon, or at least provision of appropriate medical services, as we've been discussing earlier, to this political prisoner. But definitely the Russian side is not very up to such communication and to doing something. There were even news that the Russian side refused to confirm that Pavlo Hryb declared the hunger strike. So even on such a basic level, they do not want to cooperate with the other parties in this process.
Yeah, and actually we have a quote from the UK Foreign Secretary. I saw it on Twitter just before we came on, from Jeremy Hunt. I'll read you. We have a small graphic of his Twitter. He said, quote, "Russia's continued use of politically motivated tensions is appalling. Pavlo Hryb was today sentenced to 6 years. This was last week. He's suffering from serious medical conditions and has not received adequate care in Russian detention." There we go. You can see it on screen now, and I think this is so important that this message gets out, because often these cases could be seen as very internal to Ukraine, but actually this is just a sign of the international support.
And for sure, it is very important for us to get all the assistance, all the support that we can from our external partners. And the problem is that as their turn, Russian Federation tries to create the image of our political prisoners as some ordinary prisoners and people that are guilty. But as we've been talking earlier, the case against Pavlo Hryb in particular was set up, and many people under the pressure were involved in this process, including this schoolgirl who provided evidences against Pavlo Hryb, but never came to the trial herself. So, and there are we can tell that she was under the pressure, and she provided these evidences against Pavlo Hryb under real pressure.
So, I mean, from your experience and the people that perhaps you speak to, just to reiterate, is there any interest from the Russian side for an exchange, or are they just waiting for now?
No, they're definitely waiting, and even the case of Oleg Sentsov, who was on a hunger strike for a very long time, and Vladimir Balu, who was on a hunger strike too, and who was transferred to one of the prisons in the territory of mainland Russian Federation. So this tension, this informational support of such cases, they are not really, they do not really influence the position of Russian Federation, and we need much more to somehow contribute and make the release of our prisoners, we talk about all of them, make their release closer.
Like campaigns and that sort of thing. Like, I know even in English we have the "Let My People Go" hashtag, and again, these are incredibly important.
Yes, definitely. And of course, we do not have to forget about the need to support the political prisoners themselves. Pavlo Hryb, during the last few court hearings, when he had a chance to speak with the ambassador, the other Ukrainian officials, or through his attorney, he told that he is in a huge need to receive letters, to receive information, to receive
just so they're not
support.
Forgotten, almost.
Yes, definitely. In a nutshell, yes, that he is not forgotten, and that Ukraine in general, not only officials and his relatives, that we really fight and we expect him to be released.
Okay, Denis, thank you so much for coming into our studio today. It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was Denis Savchenko. He's a Deputy Director of the NGO Crimea SOS. Thank you for watching and stay tuned for more on UATV.